Okay, recording. Speak AI, office hours 18. We're getting better, I feel, at streamlining how many hands and fingers we have to put up. Let's do it. Let's do 18. Oh, crap. There we go. Okay, yes. Office hours 18, everyone. So every week, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, get together. No matter what's going on, really. There's a lot of work. Everyone's busy. I know, no, we're all got a ton of stuff. So I appreciate that everyone's here. I have a couple of topics that we want to go through today. And again, loving this idea that we're contributing. Everyone's sort of contributing a topic. Quickly, Tyler Bryden, one of the creators of Speak AI, love technology, voice, analyzing things. Pretty happy with the systems that's being built, and also working through the complexity of the system that we built and trying to simplify it. So that's been a big theme over the last couple of months, and came down to distilled into this even pricing table discussion that we had before this, which was told that's what sort of made my head hurt. But I'm recovering, and I'm happy to be here. So maybe just a quick little round of introductions, and we'll jump into the topics.
Sure. I'm Lauren, staff accountant, admin. I like data and words and playing with numbers.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Vatsal Science, CTO at Speak AI, doing system architecture, design, a database management, full stack developer, of course, and also doing a lot of work on the voice and AI.
Also, full stack marketer.
Full stack marketer as on the part-time basis.
Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Nihal, digital strategist here at Speak. And I also like data and writing and all things voice and AI.
Okay. All right. So we'll start off with the sort of big topic of this office hours, which has been an internal shift that has also become, we sort of put public this week, which was switching from a freemium model to a free trial, and that free trial being 14 days long, nice tight loop, 60 free minutes, so you can upload some media, have that experience of the transcription of the insights that are produced, and really get access to all the features of Speak. And really just wanted to have a discussion on that because it's a pretty big change. We've had about close to around 800 people on our system. Some of them some of them logging in active all the time. Others just signed up last year and have not come back and visited. Maybe read our emails, more likely probably unsubscribe from emails. So what we saw was this a desire for us to make this change, a desire to understand who we're truly creating value for, and also just streamline a lot of the work and what we can do in the initial stages of signing up for Speak to make that engagement, that value be unlocked for anyone who does it. So yeah, just any thoughts on this switch, whether technically, business wise, lessons that you've learned along the way. Would love to hear and chat about that for a couple minutes.
I am very excited about these changes and pushing to the team from quarter 1, and I'm glad we all came on the table to make these changes. And because this is important, we made this current pricing change in the last year. We also talk about in the previous office hours, but we didn't change that much. We always included new features, new solutions based on the ask, and also a couple of things what we believe that is valuable, but we never converted into something monetization. It's not important every time, but when we do the business, it is important. Otherwise, you need to do the different route to make sure the business stay alive. I'll take a pause. Laura wanted to say something.
That's quite all right. Just every so often you have to reevaluate the actual pricing and just get a feel for what's probably a bit more appropriate. I can't think of a single company in the history of companies that just have one pricing forever and ever. And it kind of just shows that they're not really like improving, they're not really changing. They're just kind of maybe honing down on the one thing that they're doing really well for hundreds of years. But I really can't think of any company that's like that. The thing that I'm most curious about with the whole free trial thing is before we had like the free plan, which was very limited, but with the free trial, we're like giving away pretty much just everything that we have so they can try anything that they can. I'm just curious to see like how many people actually use like APIs and webhooks. Um, I'm not sure like how familiar most people are with that, even like within like the development worlds, like um, how all encompassing is APIs. Does every like engineer use APIs? Is this just something that's, you know, like to me, it's just a completely foreign thing. I'm sure there's plenty of people listening right now who have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. But
Right, right. That's a good point, and I can talk behalf of the dev community, which is pretty common. For an example, when we do the or any company, when you do the integrations with the third party, let's take a very simple example that will make sense to you, to be honest, which is the Stripe. So when you do the Stripe integrations with your product, uh, the Stripe provide the webhooks which send to the, let's say, Speak, says that Tyler's subscription received the payment, so it got successful. So what Speak does is like Speak re uh, just reinitiate his free minutes again for that new month. So basically, this is talking software to software, or I would say product to product. So this is, you can consider as the communication channel between product to product. You don't see on the front, you don't interact with that, but two systems are talking with each other using the webhooks. So whenever, for an example, in the Speak perspective, if you have your own product and if you want to integrate the Speak webhooks, how you can use that. So what are the options you have? First of all, you need to understand that. And why do you need in the first place? For example, your product as a third-party product, upload an audio or video or text on the Speak, you want to receive the notification says that the media is analyzed or text node is analyzed or media is deleted or text is deleted. Let's have these four basic examples, right? So your product now knows that the event happened on the Speak so that you can update in your product for whatever your flow is.
I'd add, I
So these
guess,
are like the very basics use cases even companies are using, and this is a little bit a talk between product to product.
I would say the the API part allows, like, there's people who want to use the front end of our system, and this is the very sort of, I would say, non development focused or larger organization. Are using the front end of our application, but we have some very incredible, like JSON, basic, like structure, like how we structure the data output that can be stored into a database, and they could, if they even want to develop their own version of a system with a front end and want to display more, like less data than what we've given, they can filter through it all. So there's a lot of ways to sort of send, capture, the whole thing that our system does, but throughout the back end, which is again an incredibly powerful system. And at some points we've had people say, guys, focus on the APIs, because there's such an overhead with some of the front end work that you're doing, but it's also, we've tied those together really nicely, and it's given us a lot of power within the platform. That's all. Anything I missed? You're still on. You're off mute.
No, on the API, I just want to touch a little bit. Is like, Lauren, this is, I believe so. This is going to be a little bit of experimentation on how, and we all will see some surprises that how people are visualizing the product by their own. I don't want to talk about an idea or a product right now, Nihal. But for example, if you have any ideas or thought about anything, you can use the Speak API to create your own product and use for your own purposes, right? So you just send a whatever, an article or the audio video to via Speak API, and whenever the analysis is ready, use for your own purposes. So I mean, these are going to open up a lot of opportunity on a good side.
I guess, Nihal, you've been, just like you've come in partway through this process, and it was, a process of hearing from Lauren and Vatzel, like, guys, we got to rediscuss pricing. We got to figure this out. And I still think there's a lot of gaps in our understanding and knowledge of, some of the decisions that we're making and how we're prioritizing these things. But yeah, just be interested to hear your thoughts on coming into this process. What we're hoping to get out of this experiment, and just anything that you're thinking.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's going to be interesting for us to see is, will this free trial change actually impact us negatively. Because to speak to your point earlier about how we have a number of users that are maybe in the system, and it's great to flex our user numbers, but when we try to go for funding rounds, or if we're talking to investors, like more than likely they'd be looking at engaged and active users anyways. So it would be interesting to see that how giving people access to Speak as a platform will also help us validate certain use cases that maybe we didn't even realize people were willing to pay for. And in a way, maybe the reason they haven't been using the platform is because it's free, right? So they just came in, gave it a shot once, and they're like, well, cool. And then just return to their routine stack, like a software stack. And overall, I think simplifying our pricing as well, and maybe organizing it a bit better, which is what we're working on, kind of giving people an idea of what they can expect with each tier, and deciding what tier works best for them it will be exciting to see as well. It's definitely a lot more complicated to decide on pricing than, because when you look at it from the outside in, it's just like, okay, like just tell me how much it is, and let me get on my way. But when you're actually setting up everything, there's obviously things that I wouldn't consider that impacts things on like the development side, or even just from a financial perspective. So that's been interesting to be a part of.
It definitely depends on like the way the company is set up, about how you're like what you're supposed to be focused on. Like there was this great video from Michael Siebel from Y Combinator talking about like what's important to be tracking. And it all depends on like your business model, because like you said, if we're moving over from free plan to free trial, we're probably going to be losing a lot of users. But when it comes to tracking users, that's only really relevant to people who are giving away like a free product to begin with. Like they're not like when you just have a free to use product, like say like YouTube, like they want to see like the user count go up. But when you have like an actual like for-profit business where you're trying to like make money off of users, then it's not so much from like how many users you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about like how much money you get from each user, because each user will have like different amounts of willingness to pay, whereas just a free user is just a free user. That's pretty much it.
And it's not like we can start advertising in our freemium model, right? Like that's not the kind of company we're trying to be.
Because then you're kind of losing money on the customer then, because
Exactly.
there's supposed to be like a lifetime value. This came up with the video that Tyler shared the other day too, the lifetime value of every customer. But when you have like a free user, the lifetime value is always going to be negative, because it's always just going to be costing money. So
that's like, I've looked at it as like there is a very right now limited, because of the way we've built a system, like cost weight to them, but I almost think it's just like a mental weight or like emotional weight that comes with it. Like you're trying, and I think part of this shift has been like, first of all, you can't run a company on free. Even if you're going for like even if you're going for what we've seen are different models, right? There's companies that take on venture funding. They want to grab market share, so they reduce their prices significantly, or they even offer a free product, get the growth in users, and then start to figure out the levers that are creating conversion activities or value activities that then they can charge for. That's typically how you see. But when you are, at least to date anyways, we are not going that route and haven't took on a big $5 million round or whatever, then we need to optimize for paying users. And so that's just a shift. And I talked about this maybe in office hours before, but that idea of like what the one company that we were working with who was doing virtual events, selling tickets, selling less tickets because they were paid tickets, but more people would show up on the final day versus they started giving the tickets away for free. Way more people would register, but no one would show up on the event day because they hadn't put an investment into that ticket. They hadn't put an investment into the event. And when we're looking at who we want to optimize for, it's people who are, as much as we wish we could optimize for everyone, we only have so much capacity as a team, and that's been realized this year. And it's like you can only the ideal is you're optimizing around people who see the value in your product and are willing even to exchange money for that because we've built something so valuable. So it's also just like, where can we focus and what can we, what can we do to make sure that we're successful here?
I agree. And what I learned throughout the process, to be honest, in last 2.5 years, related to specifically for the pricing, is there is no right answer. If we all as a team can communicate with our customer, that's a right pricing. It's like, can we even talk on the same with the same page, saying that what goes under which plan? And if we can communicate better, I think that makes more sense, because there is no right answer. There is not a definition of the pricing, because what Lauren touched upon is like the business model. Everyone's business model is different. They are in the different stages of the company, the level, the team size, what they can do, the capacity. It's like this is all included when we do the pricing package. And what is coming new with this new pricing is, I feel very confident with the segmentations, what we are trying to do, that help also us to talk with the same language and also easily with the customer. But again, like that, time will say, but these are the few words.
And like there's Ty just brought up, like, you're having free users, you're not going to make any money from them, which some people do. Like take Facebook, for instance. This is all free, but they're still making money, selling people's information. So that's another business model that we could have considered. Just give all this away for free under the condition that we're going to sell the data. Or on the flip side, we charge them, but we also take like their privacy very seriously, their security very seriously, and charge them for their security, I suppose.
Yes, we take security very seriously, and the privacy too.
Yeah, I don't think most people would want to be uploading conversations and then seeing ads about something they had just uploaded into that, even if it was free. So I think that was the advertising model of that is a very, I mean, it's scary that some of these organizations rely so much on advertising as their business model, and we've seen the impacts of that. So I'm glad I think we're making the right decision with that. And I'm trying to think anything else to add here, but like, overall it was like a tough decision, because for myself it was like, I always had this idea of like wanting to democratize technology, like give it to people. And especially some of the stuff that we're doing, it's like giving this analysis potential and ways to manage media that often has only been reserved for like, technical elites, developers, large companies. I wanted to be able to give that power to someone who doesn't have that, and including me. You know what I mean? When I realized the potential of some of this technology, I was trying to access it through APIs and things, and I just couldn't do it. It was too abstract to me, and I couldn't functionally do it. And I said, "Wow, I wish I could have the ability to do this." And I know that other people do too. And we've seen again the difference between someone using the API and leveraging our tech through that, but also how much joy we've been able to give through the front end with the right customer, by taking a very complex thing and making it as intuitive as we possibly can. And that's the stuff that gives us joy. And really, we just want to continue investing in that. We want to continue doubling down on that. And over the last several years, we've learned a lot. When people signed up for the freemium model, it was really awesome, because they would put in, what job title they do, what's the main goal they're trying to accomplish. Like, these things became huge drivers for us to understand even where to prioritize and what to do. And now it's like, with those lessons, we can use that to make a better product, and also figure out that the work we've done is valuable enough to at least ask for some reinvestment back. So any other thoughts here on this topic? I think this segues pretty nicely into some of our other topics for today, but any last thoughts on switching to the free trial and the change that's being made here?
I'm just excited to make sure we set up the proper measurements, just to see like I don't think, as far as this whole free trial goes, that we've made like, well, I guess we have some sort of a hypothesis of how much the percentage of people that are going to convert over from that, but we should probably make sure that we're tracking that number too. So
yes, this is an experiment.
It's cool, yeah, and I think it's cool because I feel like the switch to this has also spurred us on to make some other needed changes as well. Like that tie into the shift as well. So that's cool.
You know, ideally, like one of the ongoing things we've, you know, talked about is just like, you know, this is in a way, there's a like a leap of faith that needs to be made, especially specifically for my, you know, for myself here too, which has been, you know, I've still continued to do a lot of like implementations and marketing analytics and stuff to help, you know, fund this operation. And it's like, if we don't start optimizing towards paying users, I'm not going to be able to make that jump. You know, of course, yeah, it's not going to come. And that, you know, maybe it's taken a little too long to realize that. But you know, I'm happy that we still have I'm happy that we have you know, we continue to grow and we still have a great team around to help implement this. And like Neil sort of said the other day, it almost feels like we're 2 years in, but we're almost starting from scratch again with this, because we might have a moment where it's like, we might make this change. Even for example, how many we emailed everyone in the app, and it's like only 20% of the people open that email. So 80% of people never even found out that this change is coming. So we're going to have to, first of all, recontact them. But what if out of the 800 users, only 2 of them are like, you know what, I'm going to pay for this? You know, that makes a huge, it's a truth that we want to find. But it's a truth that we're going to have to deal with. And it's going to be, you know, a fresh sort of ground that we stand on once that change is made. So that's both scary, but also very exciting. And again, we're grateful for, you know, I'm grateful for all of you guys, but just all the support in general that's brought us to this stage to even be able to try to make this change.
Great. And I read somewhere is like, when you work in the startup or early stage company, you always and every day feels is like the first day, because there are always be so many things to do. You always do the improvements on the product, either or the business model, or maybe even the marketing. So it's always like the changing game, unless until you reach a point where we all feel that, okay, this is the peak point where we want to now turn our boat on some different directions, or maybe some different products on top of that, could be hardware product or something. But I definitely have some that link or essay which talk about when you work in the early stage company, because there are so many challenges we need to overcome. And I need to come on the point about the pricing and the development changes too, because when we make any those shift, that also needs to manage for, of course, for the new users, but also the current users. And that is sometimes a challenge to address that, because what happened, you might satisfy the new customers with this new pricing, but it is not always be easier to manage the current users, the current whatever that could be the notes or the recordings or anything. So yes, there are challenges, but that's a fun to work on the engineering side to overcome this.
I'm glad you have fun doing that too.
That's a fun.
Just one last point to that. You know, yesterday I did a panel for Western University, and a good friend of the company, Zamir from VidHug, was there. And before Zamir started VidHug, he worked in like biomedical engineering, doing a lot of research that then was transferred into commercial products and technologies. And he's like, there's a big difference between companies doing research and a big difference between commercialization. And I feel like, you know, what I realized, you know, throughout this process is just like so much of it was actually, you know, research driven. Like now that we've got our platform together and we can manipulate audio and video data like this, like now we're starting to see where there's value adds. Like it was almost like weren't even aware of that until we got this deep. And now we can see small things or triggers, or, you know, Nihal, we won't bring it up, but like, you know, the idea that came for you about how we could make more value out of the insights that we wouldn't have figured out unless we had gotten this deep into it. So, you know, now the goal of this is, okay, we've built something that, you know, inherently, I mean, we look in the market, we see things, just generally, you see things that people are buying and people are selling, that, it has not been as much work put into the product, or it is not as valuable as offering, and yet they're successfully selling it. And we've got to switch into that mode. We've got to switch into this commercialization mode, and are very excited about that shift. Figure out what we've done wrong, figure out what assumptions were wrong, figure out where our product sucks, where it excels. Those are all great, exciting things that we're learning every day, but are going to continue to learn over these next few months. So I look forward to sharing some lessons with that.
Maybe it's grown up.
Maybe, yes, exactly. It's a toddler. So, okay, we've got a couple of topics here. Who wants to go? Who wants to bring go for their topic?
Which one flows best?
I feel like the fact that we're asking that hurt the flow. But you know what, Miho, let's go with yours, because then I think that can go into Lauren's and then also Vatsel's at the end there. It sort of all ties together, I think.
Before I start, it's really fun. Like I just hopped into Product Hunt, and from today's hunted products, at least 6 of them are like Notion based because of the API, right? Like it was released last week. So like I just had a feeling. I was just waiting for this day. I'm like, I feel like there's just going to be like 20 different apps coming out that all work with Notion, which I mean is smart, right? And kind of in a way ties into what we're talking about, which is how do you figure out growth channels, and how do you decide which channels to also double down on, which I think has maybe been a sore point for us, but maybe just something, a point we haven't really discussed in depth or really focused on any particular channel in the past little while. Like we've had ideas, we've drafted out ideas, but I guess where we fall short sometimes is just in ultimate execution or consistent execution, right? Because even for us, obviously things are in flux, and we always have to be ready to just do what needs to be done, right, to move the business forward. But sometimes I feel like it's important to take a look at all your growth channels, decide which one you're going to actually focus on, and then figure out how that looks from a effort, time, and also financial perspective. Because looking at our plan, for instance, it's been, I guess, just over a month and a half for me. And in the month and a half, we've discussed everything from, SEO to outbound to email marketing to, potential launches to community building, right? But I feel like despite all these conversations, up until this point, we haven't really just picked a channel to go after, or 2 channels, right? Because I feel like with growth hacking, growth marketing, whatever you want to call it, it's always important to potentially run, like, let's say you pick 3 channels to focus on. And within that, it could be your focus is split, 70, 20, 10, or 60, 30, 10, whatever that breakdown is, to really drive growth through a specific channel that we feel comfortable working on. So, for us, it's looking like as the day goes by, it's looking more and more like for us that channel might be more on the content and SEO side of things. But I also guess to bring back around to my topic, it's how exactly do we go about making that decision, and how does that decision tie into our overall business goals as well?
Yeah, I think it links nicely with what Lauren's topic is about a bit too, which is, even what metric, sorry, I guess I don't want to spoil that, but like what metrics are we also prioritizing? And so when we look into, for example, our analytics in our system, we know most generally organic search has been our biggest driver of net new signups of people we have no idea who they are, which is great. That's wonderful. What I would like to know actually more clearly would be, out of those net new signups that have ever come from organic search, how much revenue has that generated? that's a different thing, you know. Like again, we're in a spot now where, because we're switching to this free trial, and you know, I've tried to, you know, built the product out like that. New people who come to the site see that there's a free trial, willing to test that trial, and are still signing up. And if we can get that activation and deliver the value, that's a more powerful channel for us. So like, I guess that's one. Like SEO is always a great channel to me because I love the idea of, you know, just in general, you search for, you have a problem, you format that problem into words and you search for it and you find an answer, you know. And if you can provide good value, then there's a great opportunity there. Of course, there is the other side of that, which is SEO can take time. You know, SEO can take. It's hard to write these, you know, guides that we talked about, and you know, Nihal and, you know, talked about that quite extensively. Like to generate the level of quality in some of these very competitive terms that we do want to rank for is not just this one. You know, you can't just go with your eyes closed and write that article out or write that guide out. So I think there's some things for us to think about, which is, we know that that's the investment that we want to make, and content in general allows us to put content on the site, but can be shared to other channels. It can also be a growth asset, it can be a sales asset, it can be a tool. And just as an example, Nihal did some great work to write some pages on some of the alternatives, or like, you know, quote unquote competitors in the market. That's created amazing contextual links across the web and has actually driven clicks, impressions, signups. And so we've, you know, those are all powerful things. Where am I going with this? I guess the last part that I just want to add is like, in general, though, I still think a lot of the stuff has come down to, when I look at revenue coming into Speak AI, a lot of those have still come from business development and personal relationships, or at least an outreach to them. So to me, there's the two, you know, if we could get down to two channels, which is one, the content, because you need the content to back up, even if you're doing outreach. But I still think there is this process of needing to outreach to people. And the idea of like good marketing, good sales is like, there's more people that know about your business today than did yesterday. And hopefully those people fit into the customer segment that you're looking at. And the part that I'm trying to work through now, lastly, is just like the capacity of that, the capacity to manage customer success that are current customers today, and also generating net new leads and people who are prospective customers, and also giving them the follow-up and the love that they deserved for them to fully understand our platform and onboard that. So that's a big, you know, it's a big task. And, you know, we're trying to figure out the best way to split that up and generate the capacity for that. And I'm grateful again to have some people being added to the team to help, but it's definitely a puzzle piece that continues to have to be put together.
Yeah, it's interesting speaking on those points, because one of the, ever since you introduced me to that contentdistribution.com, I've been mildly obsessed with that company, and actually joined their SEO Facebook group recently. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. But you know, you take a look at what they've done for some of their clients, and how, like, the founder of that company just posted like I see that Fatsoul also reacted to it. But he made he posted on LinkedIn basically saying how, you know, they released this free, not free tool, but they released a marketing tool, and they were able to go from 0 to 135K ARR without doing kind of like the typical startup launch, right? Like they didn't do product hunt, they didn't do AppSumo, didn't really do cold outreach or even paid ads, right? While all their focus was essentially based around, we are your subject matter experts, and we're here to help you solve this myriad of issues you have. And I'm considering the strength we have in our team, right? Like whether that's on the technical side, marketing side, I do think it'll be quite a bit of work, but I think if we can capitalize on that expertise and present it to people in a way that we're selling to them without selling to them, right? We're selling to them by helping them, essentially. I think that's how we're really going to get to where we want to be, because that's also kind of why Speak was founded in the first place, right? To help people access. It was to help with accessibility, help people find things that they might have lost, right? Things they didn't even know that they wanted to know. And basically building up this idea that as Speak, we're not just here to sell you this software product, right? Obviously, and any person can tell that we're a business, but at the end of the day, our goal is to help you solve a problem you have, a problem that hurts enough that you're willing to pay us, 15 to $100 or more to solve. And I know we had a super quick talk about like what that looks like from like a hiring front, what that looks like from a team front. How does the team actually contribute to this? And it'll be interesting to keep building out those procedures, I guess.
I have one follow-up questions on your question actually. So you have worked in last many years on the SEO marketing and also as a digital specialist and the strategist. So it's like from your experience, yes, I mean, yes, I like those articles on the LinkedIn when they say those are the catchy titles,
of course,
putting 0 to 135K. There are so many things goes behind the scene, right? There are so many experiments goes behind the scene, but they just talk about what it worked for them, right? The wins, right? No one is sad about which things didn't work. So from experience, the question is, do you believe going behind 1, 2, or 3 static number strategies throughout the year could help business to grow? So you can put anything on the first, second, and third priority. Could be SEO, marketing, content creation, talking with customer. So do you think is that putting exact 3 things for 1 year, does that help to grow the business? Or flipping 1, 2, 3 options every quarter, or maybe I would say every quarter would be the ideal, help to understand what works and what not works, because the products are different and so the solutions. So what do you think about that?
So I think when it comes to growth, like growth and marketing are no longer as static as they used to be. It's not just, let's go dump 20K a month into paid advertising and hope that it sticks, right?
That is hope.
Yeah, that's hope, right? Like it's not data driven, it's not experiment driven. But to answer your point, I think there are certain things that, in my opinion, just from a marketing perspective, that businesses have to do, right? And to me, one of that is education and just solving problems, right? Because let's say, especially the way Google and like how Google is approaching search now, it's no longer about can you like stuff keywords, for instance, right? Yeah. It's semantic, it's contextual. It's if someone lands on your page, let's say they were looking for how to do like video sentiment analysis, right? Why should Google keep showing your site as an authoritative source if you don't prove that you're an authoritative source? Because let's say, like when we have like some of our bigger clients that we have right now, like they trust you guys, right? Like you guys like have shown them that you know what you're talking about. You're not just trying to like, you didn't just sell them a product and then you left them out to dry, right? It's you sold them a product, told them how to use the product, and you've continually taught them how to use the product better. And so, yeah, like to your point, right, going back to that initial kind of breakdown, I think within that, let's say 60, 30, 10 bucket, you're going to have a channel just based on our capacity as well, right? I think that really helps. So for instance, if we had a dedicated content person, right? It becomes a lot easier to churn out 30 articles a month, right? If we had a dedicated email specialist, it's very easy to build like 20 email funnels.
But the constraint is the capacity and the resources, right? I mean, that's the same thing also works, let's say on the engineering side. We can see a lot of integrations or a lot of things if we have a person who just focus on the one task. could be, let's say, Google Meet integration, Zoom integration, any integrations, third party. But the restriction over here is like the number of resources and the 24-hour capacity here for all of us. Yeah. So because you mentioned about talking about the different from your 1.5 month experience, talking about different strategy, could be community building, the help sections, could be the Google SEO thing, what we are doing. But the one part didn't make sense to me was if we just focus on two things for a year, because the time is the main piece here, then how does that work on the marketing side? Because I always believe from the engineering perspective is like, unless you don't figure out the solution, you just need to try to experiment different things, what works the best for that problem. So I mean, I just wanted to know, is like that doesn't a little bit make sense to me to. Yeah.
I think, but you know, like there's obviously innovation, and there's obviously continually providing new value, but to a degree, when you don't have your basics in place, right? If we don't have our basics in place, it's a lot harder to build. So you know.
So what is the definition of the basics here?
In my opinion, basics in place would be like, so take the existing state of our content, for instance, right? It's someone comes to our site, their information about what Speak does, how they can use Speak, more or less just lives on the landing pages, right? Like in app to date, we haven't really built out too much of an onboarding process, for instance, right? Like it's in the works, but it's not something that we've built out previously. So where do people normally go after that? Maybe they go into, like, you know, the help section. Maybe they go to your blog, right? And I think building out some core pieces that are tied to our overall growth. So something that is useful for us as like a selling tool, but is also something that, you know, like the next time Tyler goes to like one of his conferences and he's like talking to a researcher, it's like, hey, you know, like here's a guide on how you can use Speak to like analyze your, like, you know, your interviews, right? And like, and once again, considering that a large chunk of our, I guess, enterprise and higher paying customer pool tends to be, what's the word I'm looking for? At a higher kind of, like, we're allowed to maybe even speak at a higher like technical level to them, right? Where they want to understand how exactly they're going to be using the system to solve these complex problems that the average person wouldn't care about, right? And I find, at least right now, that's not something we have, and we're taking steps towards that, right? Like, for instance, you helped me with getting this help guide off the ground, and I think that's a great first step for just general user experience as well, right? Because when I talk about content, when I talk about focusing on content as a growth channel, it's not just writing for Google, it's writing for our users, right? And by writing, it could also be videos, right? Like Tyler's recorded a couple of video interviews, but it's like, how accessible are they? Like, how do we make stuff more accessible? And that all fits neatly within our content strategy. Like, obviously, I think, once again, so speaking capacity, there's only so much you can do without context switching all day, right? And then secondary to that, you're always going to want to focus at least a larger bulk of your effort towards a channel that's already working, and then smaller chunks of time to experiment with, you know, let's say 4 or 5 other channels that you're not sure if they work just yet. So let's say we're putting 50% of our time towards organic stuff, and then the other, we, you know, test out email, we test out outbound, we test out posting on Reddit, and over time we can be like, okay, now, you know, we've noticed that email doesn't do anything for us at this point, so now we're just going to double down on organic and, let's say, forums, right?
I agree. Because right, then this is the different, what you just explained.
Yeah.
Your last part is different than 60-30-10 breakdown.
Yes.
A little bit, right? Because 50% is just focus on you believe that's working, and you
Mm.
also see the from could be the onboarding process or onboarding details we receive, and other 48 divided into this different channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nihal like had like a great example the other day of there's a blog post that I believe Lexi wrote, Patzel, understanding the impact of perception. So it actually drives a ton of impressions and clicks to our sites every month. Doesn't really con- connect specifically with Speak, at least today, the Speak of today. Great article, really interesting stuff. But I don't think anyone's ever read that article and said, okay, now I want to use this software. It's more just this educational article. And so, he asked a great sort of thought exercise of like, if we stripped away a couple of these articles that were written a long time ago, how much of these contribute directly to the growth of Speak? And that's why Nihal is categorically destroying pages on our site to focus on what is actually creating true value and what's leading driving us towards the growth of now I'll bring in, I guess, what Lauren wants to talk about today, some of the metrics that we're aiming for and how we measure the success of that. So Lauren, my friend, talk a little bit about your topic. I know we're coming up for time, but this is sort of leads right to it.
Oh, sure. I've just been spending my week doing lots of projections, and as far as projections go, it's important to have an understanding of where you've come from and then where you're going from there. So always a metric's always helpful for at least quantifying that at least. And there's just a lot of different levels of metrics too. Like there's some really simple stuff. Like the things that I follow most often is just revenue growth, expense growth, gross profit margins, stuff like this. All like the accounting stuff. Um, that's more so relevant to like my work. I'm not sure like how much impact it really has on your work too. Like when it comes to metrics, and like keeping track of them from time to time. It's a matter of what is what am I doing right now that's influencing this number? If it's going up, it's going down, because it can really help you to get some introspection on like on your whole workflow and what impact it really does make. And the metrics that I've been getting more and more interested in is the metrics that everybody has more control of, or like more of an impact, like together collectively. Like constantly you hear that the most important metric for like SaaS companies, especially, is the ratio of lifetime value to customer acquisition cost. And I think it is super important just because it's like both sides of the whole SaaS business. Like lifetime value is really being influenced by like the whole engineering team. Like you're putting in you're making a product that's you know driving retention, that people are constantly coming back to more and more, spending more and more money on. So um, lifetime value really has a connection to the actual work that the engineering team puts into it. And then on the flip side too, the cost of acquiring a customer, that's entirely all on like the sales and marketing side of the company. Like how much of their time do they put into actually acquiring customers too? So it's really like I feel like LTV to CAC is really like the yin and the yang of everything, all the work that we do here. And it's just these numbers too are extremely complicated, just because they can go a lot deeper. Like for example, cost of acquiring customers. Like sure, you have your advertising expenses, but then you have the salaries of you two guys especially, and then it's like you have to break down the time, like how you spend all of your weeks, what goes towards acquiring which customers too, because we're quite complicated in that we're not just we're just getting software customers, like just B2C. We have B2B as well. We have so many different people that we're going towards, so it really makes it complicated. Like what, because then it becomes like the amount of time that you guys are putting into marketing and sales. Who are you marketing towards? Who are you selling towards? And like how many people from that group are you getting? Um, so yeah, I just wanted to bring this up, ask like what you guys follow from day to day, month to month, and like how it really impacts your whole workflow. Like you have your mindset of what I have to do today, and I want to understand like how you feel about the impact that that work has on this number.
I mean, I'll add, one part where I see, like, in a way,
Um,
a lesson I've learned this year. Like, I mean, one of the things that always comes back as any company, especially when owner of the company, is like, I want this business to be profitable. I want those net earnings to be positive. And, and we've achieved that sometimes, and there's other times we haven't. But what's been interesting has been sometimes those wins that you get to achieve profitability are short-term wins, especially when you're doing something that's not necessarily directly contributing to the ultimate mission that you have. So again, I've maybe, taken on an advertising implementation because it generates some solid cash flow for us. But then now I am doing a context shift constantly. I'm monitoring someone else's success, and I'm not, then there's the opportunity cost of what I should be contributing. In those 10 hours I could be doing impactful things that directly contribute to the Speaks mission outside of that profitability aspect. And so there's been a lot of times in this own journey throughout these years where it has been, I've always wanted to look towards the long term, but I feel like you can't figure out the short terms of sustainability, that you can't even get to the long term. So I've had to make a lot of compromises and sacrifices along that journey. And like, the thing that I'm trying to figure out is, like, we've talked about, like, North Star metrics and what things we see as being most successful for our customers. And then, just one thing that sticks out to me, just as an example, like, there's a lot of like, investors, especially more sophisticated VC firms. If they're evaluating what your company looks like, what do? They actually plug into your Stripe account and they analyze your Stripe account, and that's how they understand if they should make an investment in your company. That's, Clearbank. That was literally how, one of the ways that they sort of differentiated and drove growth so quickly. They were looking specifically at Shopify store, but same idea. And it's like, even for that, like, some of our revenue comes through Stripe, some of it comes through QuickBooks. So we've already separated these accounting systems and make that a hard calculation to make. So, the part that I'm trying to figure out right now is, like, what are those? Could prioritize revenue, but if you prioritize revenue in a way that doesn't take you towards your ultimate goal, it's actually taking you further away from the ultimate goal. So, yeah, I'll end there. That's just something I've been thinking about a lot.
Lauren, you have a good point. I would encourage you to take a look on Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot. He released an article on exactly what you talk about, how to maintain the ratio, and what to look at and when. So when you are 1 year in, 2 year in, 3 year in the business, what should that ratio should look like, and then how to switch or make the decisions based on that number. I also have that link even after this call, but he explained about, with this, just specifically for the SaaS company, what they're missing with these numbers and how they screwed up at 3 year or 3.5 year down the line, and what you can make sure to improve before that. Yeah, that just wanted to say, it's like that was very interesting article. And he also talked about X percentage number could be 150. I don't remember the exact number, but was around 150. It's like, if that goes over that, then that's a red flag. So you need to see that what's going wrong when you reach this number with the ratio.
That's a thing that I was worried about too, is maybe there are some metrics that you probably shouldn't be following, or maybe not following yet, because it could really just destroy your whole path of work, your whole day, essentially, because you're just thinking about this number that is, especially like percentage in the early stage, is just so construed, and you may be thinking you're doing a lot better or a lot worse than you actually are. But it's all that's one thing that's really confusing to me, is like, when's the right time to track metrics, and which metrics are actually harmful for you? Because, like, the idea is, like, all as much information as you can get, as much data you can crunch through, it's all going to be helpful. But maybe there's something that's just going to be blocking your vision in a way.
What is the harmful in this case? What do you mean by harmful? Does that impact your day to day?
It's like a metric that could be, like,
just construed way too much, so you think you're doing a lot better or a lot worse than you really are. Maybe
isn't
not
it
like
a good sign? Because that will tell you that this is the red flag. It's like, hey, now you crossed the limit or something like that.
Yeah, like it's not like any metric specifically, but like maybe it's
Mhm.
just the way that the metric is construed at the moment, just based on the data that you do have, that you're making bad decisions based on the data that you have, like maybe too much, too little. There's a lot of nuance to it.
Ideally you're using a metric that's a very good metric that's accurate, that is like a binary decision maker for you, like it's like, am I contributing to this, yes or no? If I'm not, then I have to really prioritize if I should be doing this task, and that needs to be an accurate, that needs to be an accurate assessment. And I see that all the time in marketing and analytics, where someone thinks that they've got, again, for example, X contact form submissions, they figured out that their tracking tag wasn't working. And now all their analysis or understanding or how they were optimizing was based off a false conversion rate or a false number of conversions. So it's also just like accurately choosing those metrics and making sure they are the right ones. And also that we don't overload ourselves with metrics, because like something that, Nihal's brought up today, and even as we're looking at some KPI stuff, it's just like anytime if you choose 10 metrics, you're not going to be able to optimize for all those metrics. Choose one, choose two. The more, especially with small capacity, the more diluted those efforts get. Maybe you can add some more if they're all nicely tied together. But like I see lots of companies say, we want to get as many, signups as possible, but I want to make sure that our Instagram following goes up. And it's like, when you make that choice, you get 50% success on both of those, and which means you failed. And so that's the opportunity cost, or that's the trade-off by choosing the wrong metrics. Yeah, that's all I gotta say. Nihal, you're off mute. What's up, buddy?
No, I guess to that point, it's also important for us to maybe have, like, obviously I think even though let's call it, each department will have their own individual metrics. It's also important for us to have unified metrics that speak across channels, right? So if engineering, like, kind of with that whole idea of not living in a silo, right? So if engineering believes that retention is the one true North Star, right? It's like, how does sales and marketing fit into achieving that true North Star, right? Assuming that's a universal metric that we've agreed on, or if there's like 5 universal metrics we've agreed on, right? How does the interdisciplinary contribution fit into that?
That's what, like, I remember you talking about one day, big development focused companies, like one of the metrics is like how many bugs you push into production as a developer, right? So like that's a great metric to follow, especially once you've got a very sophisticated team built out and they're like really focused on optimization.
Yeah.
But then it's like, if you're, just there's a trade-off. For example, if that's the main metric for you, are then you contributing to the main trade-off of retention, or are you like, there's trade-offs with just any metric you choose to decide. So I think it's a good, worthwhile discussion to have. I'm glad it was a topic point to print, especially as we make these changes with the free trial and we start to see a more rapid feedback loop of what's working and what's not working. That becomes very important for us to make sure, as more data starts streaming through, that we're prioritizing those things properly.
But I strongly believe that this metrics should come from the business side, not the engineering side. Otherwise, that screw up the business instead of helping the business. So business should set the metrics that engineering would help them to grow or contribute into the direction.
That's why you're a good person, Batsel.
Otherwise, if think about, the engineers are setting the metrics for the business, like that doesn't make any sense or connections there. It's like business set the metrics that we want. We just want to focus. I also read one article on what do you want to do when you are in the early stage company, and when you are on early stage, you want to do many things at the same time. Could be the user acquisitions, user retention, maybe making sure the onboarding flow, or many other things. But in that article, they talk about, it's a very successful company. I can send an article again after this call, but they talk about, they just focused for 2 or 3 quarters on the user acquisition. Every single department, from marketing, sales, engineering, even the customer success, they just focus on the customer acquisitions, because once they have the base, the volume to talk about, find the problems, hear from their customers, then the user retentions comes to the picture. But when you're dealing with 50 customer, what the heck you're going to do with the user retention? Just get the 5,000, 50,000, maybe 500K customer, and then talk about the user retention with 20%, 30%, 40%. So that's a great learning lessons I learned, and just wanted to share with everyone is like, focus on one metrics at the time, could be the user acquisition, go after that. And because that changed, again, Nihal, you talk about the metrics, and also Ron, and because this changed the whole game. Now you talk about the different level of metrics just related to the user acquisition, not the retention, because the retention metrics are different. You want to track the different things when they are on the platform. So the change or screw up the whole game.
Yeah. Oh, and go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, I guess as a final point, do you think that, like, so do you think metrics should be, let me rephrase. So, for instance, in your mind, engineering helps, like, achieve business goals, right? And whatever those business goals are, right? Whether that's acquisition or retention. But do those, like, is there ever a situation where it's the flip, where, like, let's say like your marketing team contributes to retention, and like, what does that potentially look like as well, right? Like, does marketing even have a hand in retention, right?
Yes. Then okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So I'm just wondering, like, because just going back to the initial point, right? Like, it's cross-functional, right? Like, obviously, yes, business has to set these metrics, but engineering is part of the business process as well. Right?
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah. For sure, there is no doubt in that, because, for example, your messaging techniques is going to be completely different, right? Because when you talk about user acquisition, you're talking about the solutions, how you can help. But when it switched to the user retention, now you're gonna start talking about, let's say in the transcription, what they can do. Okay, you use X feature, how about this one, right? Because you are trying to make them engaged into that solution. So that changed the messaging, that changed the email threads, that changed the campaigns, that changed your Facebook, Google advertisement, everything. The articles you're going to write about is not about user acquisition, it's about user retention. It's like your strategy is completely different now. You're talking with a different language. So for example, even I, Tyler, you, or it's like everyone is going to be somewhere on the webinar or somewhere. Our language changed, right? Because now we are talking at the different level. Is we are talking about user retention. It's like we are providing the solution. 50% user are using transcription, 30% are using analysis. Now we want to focus, or which channel we want to more focus upon, right? So, and also even the user retention or user acquisitions, those are the one simple metrics, but that depends completely on the OKR. So now OKR is the top level architecture we are talking about for a 1 year, that divides into the 4 quarter, and 4 quarters is divided by like, what we're gonna do in this quarter. So that could be the 2 quarter challenge, or 3 quarter, or it could be the 1 quarter focus just on the one metrics. So it's the high level I learned is like the OKR, which we all set from last 1.5 years. Through the OKR, we divide the quarterly goals, and the quarterly goals basically are all aligned with this metrics.
Coming at the end of time here. And that's all. I think you sort of had a topic, but I think we got part of it. I think we can talk about
quite a bit on that side.
The part we've talked about before, and just as part of that OKRs, we've mentioned this before, but it's also the ICE model, which is the impact, confidence, and ease of then delivering on those OKRs. And I think that for myself, as we come to the end of this month, there's definitely a need to revisit the OKRs, because it's been a very fast-moving quarter to date. We're almost through it in a way. And just I'll add one last complexity that's very interesting to the part about what you're prioritizing. Like, we in the past, like, and this is my own fault, but like especially when Vatsal and I first working together, it's like how many features can we build? You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily how many, think it's like not necessarily how many benefits are we creating, how many solutions are we generating. It's like, can we do this? And that's, that's a lesson that I've learned throughout this
I would say
process.
that is my fault. I just not needed to be execute on those things. It's like, nope. That could be the different scenario, and we wouldn't have a lot of features in the app, to be honest.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. We've got now a well-featured app. Now it's just, again, putting it in the right place. And it's just also one last part that is very interesting, right? Is some companies aren't even optimizing for acquisition or retention. They're optimizing for IP. They're optimizing for a milestone so they can get to their next fundraise. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, even where you are as a company and what you're trying to optimize, how much those metrics can change. And I just always use that. Life to me has always been, you think you're diving into something, but you think that thing is a small puddle, and then as you get closer to the puddle, you realize it's a lake, and then as you start walking to the lake, it just becomes this ocean. Everything is so deep. There's so many nuances to everything, and it's a continued lesson that makes life scary, wonderful, beautiful, and again, very glad to share that time with you. So, in
It's
that
a
mind,
fast-changing world.
yes, exactly. So, with that mind, any last thoughts from anyone here today?
Yes, I want to share one amazing tweet because we talk about a lot of things from beginning to the early stage. So that the tweet is about the first-time founder and the second-time founder. So what the first-time founder do? They make a tons of features. Everything is automated. Zero sales call, minimal marketing, and sells to startup. It's like sells to early stage company. And what second time founder do is like limited feature, hands-on support, everything is manual. Daily sales call, paid and unpaid marketing, sales to the specific niche. So that sticks to my mind is like, and I also message him about, it's like, these are the learning lessons you learn, because either you learn from others' mistake, or if you don't learn them, you're definitely going to go to that rabbit hole, and after you're going to learn that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge that we face as humans. That often we don't learn from others; we have to learn from our own mistakes. But for anyone who watch this, listen to this, if you're in Canada, hope you have a wonderful long weekend. If you're not in Canada, hope you have a wonderful weekend, anyways. But thank you again for checking this out, and look forward to the next one.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye.